Joe, do you feel like we've regained that form? Season 4, we're back out of our slumber, but how does it feel?
Yeah, it is like that kind of idea that we've returned from our caves, and we're not ones for trucking, but we do have cravings, and that craving is for pop culture. And it kind of hitting our stride here this week, in that it's somewhat like retro, in that the topic of discussion for this podcast definitely is something that tugs on the heartstrings of every single millennial out there who had at least 3 channels to pick from on Saturday morning when they were growing up. And one of those was Fox Kids. So the fact that when Disney just was looking through all the ways they could continue to pile the millions, they're like, hey, let's take that X-Men animated series, let's keep it going.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant. Mm-hmm.
Feels like it came out of nowhere, but, it's like suddenly there's announcements in 2019, and they're like, yeah, we're going to just kick some dust off of that X-Men series.
Yeah, and with the announcement of X-Men 97, it really had to make me think over exactly when I fell off on this series, because I will admittedly say I did not stick around for the entirety of the X-Men the Animated Series. I was there at the start. I was there for, those fantastic primetime 2-hour specials that they did. Those were great. But as soon as it became that kind of Jubilee, Wolverine, Beast hit the road show sort of thing, I checked out. So I was kind of worrying, what's happened between me leaving and X-Men 97? So I'm interested to see where the rest of us have come and gone, especially you, Mark, because in the comment section there'll be plenty of, I'm sure, hey, Joe, did you watch the show back then? The way you're talking about this new one right now? But Mark, yeah, where did you leave off with the original animated series before getting to 97 here?
Oddly, the same issue kind of came up with me in X-Men that came up with the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I was in front of a TV a lot from 92 to maybe 94. And then after that, it was wait, what was going on? Was I actually playing outside? It's like I was doing things, Mm-hmm. And the animated series of both X-Men and Spider-Man was my jam. If I wasn't playing with Power of the Force, Star Wars figures, I was in front of the TV watching these shows. A little bit of Extreme Ghostbusters peppered in there, but
oh yeah.
But seriously, this, I actually was more into Spider-Man than I was into the X-Men, even though we were reading the comics, and my brothers and I were really big in Age of Apocalypse, reading that stuff.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But when it came to the show, yeah, for me, I think my brothers and I, we were all there season 1, consuming the shit out of this, and then I fell off a bit, caught a little bit of the Phoenix Saga, and I was by that point I was what's going on with these people?
Yeah. Why does Superman have a mohawk and live in space? What is going on?
Who are these people? I had no idea. Seriously, so 92 to 94, yeah, I had a seat at that table, but then I don't know what happened to it. It just boom. I was off doing stuff.
Yeah. It's we can say we discovered women. Not in 94. No. That hasn't happened yet. Thanks to Power Rangers, I knew I liked them, but talking to them, no, that's not happening yet.
I was aware of women. I knew what they were.
Aware of them. I liked them. I just wasn't sure what to do beyond that.
Yeah.
I tried to math it and couldn't do it because I was bad at math for a very long time. Take that what you will about all the implications with it. But yeah, no, it sounds like we both at a point where we were hooked, and then suddenly it was, you know what? I'll stick around for that pretty kick-ass theme song, and I got things to do.
I'm telling you, man.
That was a banger, man. Mm-hmm.
I don't even care who wants to disagree with me on this one. I truly believe that there must have been a spike in childbirths during this era of the 90s, because people would, like, this is before Viagra, this is before, like, crazy porn. Like, people were just in the bedroom and like, what's going to get me going? And suddenly somebody has the recorded, cassette tape with the X-Men theme song. They put that shit on and we're making babies. Like, that's what happened.
Left and right. Had Gen X not already been made, this would have made sense even more.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. That original theme song, man. It never leaves your brain once it's in there. I mean, unless I guess you dial that card and you get the dementia thing. But regardless, I think that's one of the last things the brain's going to hold on to if it is slowly disappearing. Yeah. But either way, yeah. The crazy thing about the original X-Men series, though, wasn't actually canceled. It's one of these really weird things about pop culture that I don't know if people remember. Like, it was originally slated to be a 65 episode order, okay? And after the folks over at Saban and Fox, once again, Saban is involved in making a kids show, crazy.
Yep, bizarre.
Once they realized how successful it was, they're like, hey, can we get maybe, like, I don't know, 11 to 12 more episodes attached to this thing?
Just call it a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all that. One thing I will say about this, that extra order, like, if you're following along with the original X-Men series, the animation gets a little weird after the first couple seasons. And the reason for that is because the people who are actually animating it, they kicked it over to the Philippines, which, Joe, as you'll know, those are my people, the Filipino people. We're not always known for being prompt, and I'm guessing maybe some of that had to do with the animation style of that last season, which was admittedly a bit strange, but that's they did.
I'm sure they were just denied Jollibee access that whole time, because you could have got that in the system. I'm sure gold would have been churned out. But hey, no, yeah, it is just one of those things, because sometimes, like, as a kid, you wonder kind of like, what happened? Like, I thought we had a good thing going here, and suddenly my cartoon's just gone. But kind of like between this and even like Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, it was like, no, the goal was 65 episodes, and then we make money through syndication. Capitalism. Yeah. And that was the plan, and it was successful. So, never canceled, just it did what it was supposed to do, and like, hey, we're good. Let's move on. So, 2021, we get Bo DeMayo, who is our lead writer for this show, and right before it premieres in 2024, fired. Gone.
It reminded me of the Jay-Z Linkin Park, combination where he says grand opening, grand closing. It was like, yep, as soon as they, cut the scissors through that little tape, like, look, this is great and all, but we're going to go a different direction. It is so strange how that goes down. Oh, yeah. I've read between some of the lines, though, in some of the Twitter chatter and X, formerly known as Twitter, chatter. They were talking about how DeMayo apparently had this, like, really rough environment that he was building, and this isn't confirmed by anyone, but they were saying like it was a really difficult, like, just kind of thing to work with DeMayo. Apparently he was really aggressive with people, and this is once again, this is kind of like rumors and stuff, but he seems to not have acknowledged a whole lot of this, which to me means maybe he doesn't want to make it worse for himself, or maybe I don't know. There's some truth in there somewhere, but yeah. And when these things happen, like right before the premiere of a show or a movie or comes out, it means one of two things: either the studio has seen the work and is like, "Hey, dude, what the fuck did we pay you for?" or they're an asshole. Those are typically the things, because you've got to be a huge asshole. Like it's like. It's got to be one of those. It usually has to be one of those two things. Because if something's really good, sometimes in Hollywood and in the production business, that assholeness can slide because of success. And, like, I have to imagine when Disney Plus watch this, they're like, this is fucking gold. Because it is. It is a great show. We're going to get to our first impressions here in just a little bit. But, like, when you see the show,
Like, they had to know this was at least set for another season. It's going to make some money for them. Maybe keep the guy on. They're not firing him because of the show. So it's like, I mean, while it is all speculation, we could speculate all day. My guess, those rumors probably have some substance to them. But on to the fun part. Let's talk first impressions about this show, because, as I said before, there may be just, a little bit of gold buried underneath the surface of this here X-Men 97. But, Mark, what did you think of the show when you first turned it on?
Well, I have to say that, for me, part of the hype of this TV show, aside from some of the nostalgia stuff we've mentioned already, is the fact that we've actually connected with a few of the people who were on it. And so for me, I almost had I want to support these folks like crazy big, because, I was just so interested in the fact that Adrian Hough came back to play Nightcrawler. And so many of the original talent came back. Some of the surviving talent who's still here. Unfortunately, a couple of the original actors have passed away since. But yeah, it was, so obviously Adrian Hough, I can't say enough good things about this dude. It was like one of his first roles as a voice actor to be Nightcrawler, because we're talking, I mean, well over, 25, 30 years ago at this point. And seriously, he's still obviously operating in a very high level. Love the dude to death. Seriously, guys, we'll link him in the show notes. Go check him out. Support the shit out of this dude. He's amazing. But it doesn't just start there. There's also Gavin Hammon, dude, who plays Trask. He plays Trask. And I was sitting there at first going, why does this guy sound like Gavin Hammon? And I looked it up and I'm like, oh my God, that is Gavin Hammon. like literally Kenny from The Walking Dead, who we talked to, a little over a year ago. It's like, holy shit, that is him. And so for me, the first impressions were obviously the rush of nostalgia. A ton of actors that I love who are involved in this. Really awesome voice talent. But for me, it doesn't really get much better, Joe, than the intro to this TV show. And I didn't know when I was going to sit down and watch this. I really didn't. And I had a fairly open day at work one day, and I just sat down as soon as the finale was there. And I just watched it all during a work day as I'm finishing up admin work and stuff. And the whole time I'm glued, from the get-go. I was absolutely glued to this. So obviously we'll get through the plot stuff eventually, but for me, I noticed immediately the hook pulled me in. And I could tell that this was a show made for adults. It was made for people who watched the original one. Not that you had to be a huge mega fan to be able to pick it up, but right away, man, they had it, Joe. And
they do.
And one last first impression that I noticed, obviously they're mirroring the animation of the original. They're trying to keep that vibe, but then they also add these little things like hair movement. They're talking and they're moving, and suddenly you see a little bit of flick of hair just kind of move in the wind or something. And I was like, hold on. This is modernized. I like it. This is cool. And for me, Joe, I have an aversion to anime in some respects. And they have adapted this to kind of that active anime modern style, which is fine. It's good. It's a lot more fluid though. Yeah. So yeah, that's what hit me right away. How about you?
Yeah. Well, kind of on the same page you would think. Wasn't sure when I was going to start this, because in the just insane ocean of media that we have to consume now, it's either I start something new or I watch Aliens again. Usually Aliens wins that fight. And I was like, this is something I was going to get to eventually. And then, I'm homesick for 2 days straight. And you know what? I've gone through some Price is Right. It's too early in the day for Aliens. What would make this shitty day better? Saturday morning cartoons. Let's rock X-Men 97, baby. And then it brings you right back to being a kid again. And that was, it is something that I want to say this is I feel like this is explicitly built for the millennial crowd that watched this growing up, because you do get the exact same things, the exact same theme song. They update the animation. I felt like it was somewhere between the original animation and Archer. was the best way I could think of, like, putting it there for what the style was like. And then they also do a really good job of aging up, like, the story for the generation that watched it originally. But at the same time, it isn't so adult that, like, you know, if I had children, which I don't on purpose, I couldn't watch this with them if I wanted to. There is, I mean, it's X-Men, so there is death involved. I'm not saying any characters necessarily. I'm just saying people die in X-Men stories because it's always an adult storyline. But, like, none of the deaths that happen are gruesome, grotesque to the point where you couldn't explain it to a younger audience that's watching it. So my first impression was, like, it hooked me. I went from being, like, about to die or having to rush to the toilet in the next few minutes to I ain't moving. Bowels be damned, I'm sitting in front of this TV until this whole thing's done.
I just want to point out, this isn't how Joe normally lives his life. This is a very unique illness period where
it's like either death or shitting myself. Like, those are the options.
Yeah. Joe does not live like a permanent life with IBS or anything, folks. This is a very truncated time in his life. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I love that you mentioned that, though, about this, like, elevated respect, I think, for the viewers, is that they treat us almost like, hey, you can handle adult themes that aren't, like, pervasive, but still graduated from what was here before. And that was one of those things, as I mentioned, as part of the hook that I think you just called out, was that it is a show that does really take on this, like, soap opera feel that the original also was kind of in that space too. But it was to the point where, like, the drama is not too overblown, but at the same time, it's like, these are superheroes going through real shit. It's not like just, it's not just, you know, good guys versus bad guys. It was, there's actually emotions here. And I really did appreciate that as an adult. It's like, yeah, dude, it's been several decades here. I think we could probably amp up the seriousness just a little bit, you know.
A little bit, yeah. Speaking of the seriousness, Professor X, seriously not doing so hot at the start of the show. Very dead, actually. Which, not giving anything away, you find that out in the first 5 seconds of the first episode. So, you know what? Don't hang me to the spoilers. The first season's already done. Suck it up and read something.
Let's do this. No, let's do this right now. This is not like a movie where, you know, people give like a 1 month grace period or something. This is TV. The rules are a little bit different.
Yep.
And honestly, with a weekly release schedule, a lot of people go, hey, you've got 24 hours before this shit's ruined for you. So at this point, we're going to discuss full spoilers. If you don't want to be here for that, feel free to go listen to something else, go watch this, and then come back. Yeah. I know it's a bit of a risk.
That's a big underline on the come back. You come back and you listen. Don't stop now. We have analytics on how long you stick around. We need it. Need it bad.
We'll see if there's a drop-off here, okay? Like, it tells us specifically, this moment in your video, people stopped watching or stopped listening.
And then that's when we have to now strategically put in Sarah McLachlan singing with animals. So if you go away too soon, that happens.
But hey, Joe, to your point, yes, Professor X, as far as like the media is concerned, as far as like what we're seeing in all the imagery in the very beginning, this dude got 86. He was killed by an assassin, which to the point of the original series, I don't know what really happened in that last year. I didn't go and watch any of it. So if you tell me Professor X is dead, I'm just going to go, all right, you know what?
Cool story, dude.
That's part of it. That's part of it. Okay.
Which, speaking of that, Morph back. Didn't he die in like the first episode of like the old series? I still remember Morph being at least assumed dead.
No, so
Morph
had a bit of a dance with Mr. Sinister in the original series. What ends up happening is that he ends up getting like corrupted by Mr. Sinister. He kind of reinfiltrates the X-Men, and he actually has to go through a journey to earn his own sanity back, which he ends up doing. Unfortunately, though, if you did watch the original ones and you're like, oh yeah, Morph is just kind of dead and he's an asshole, it's like, actually, and I will put on the whole dork, actually, he comes back, he kind of gets back into it, and honestly, I'm fine with that being the case. As far as the narrative choice goes in the original series, why they did that, whatever, we can leave that in the past. We're not talking about that. But yeah, Morph is back kind of front and center. I dig. I like his character. He's like this shot of like positivity into the group that, frankly, you've got these adult themes, you've got the drama, you've got the soap opera. I mean, Joe, this does at times feel like a Telemundo soap opera in the very beginning. You need something to cut through that a little bit,
You
man.
really do, because when you look at the other cast of characters, you've got Rogue and Gambit are back, and of course, if you know those characters, there's a love story there, and this is also like, I mean, you got Creole Gambit, and like the guy is just made to be a soap opera with his very thick accent and his love for Rogue, and yet they can't touch each other aspect because of her powers. So you can have that lightened up by Morph's sense of humor. But on the other cast of characters, you've got Storm is back, Jean Grey is back, Wolverine's there, Cyclops there. They still fucking hate each other, which is fine. That's just how it should be.
Can we take a moment though to talk about that, because obviously through the original animated series, even into the original X-Men cinematic universe, I mean, that is like a ton of time that they dedicate to this. That Cyclops and Wolverine don't like each other. You know, it's the piss and vinegar combination type of thing, which I'm just going to call Wolverine the piss of that scenario.
Oh, easily, yep.
But they don't. This is a really good strength of the X-Men 97 revival, is that they don't give too much time to any one person. And this balance between Cyclops and Wolverine not liking each other, it's not a huge thing. But it's established fairly early on. These guys don't like each other still.
It's just consistent jabbing back and forth, and that's really all you get out of it. It's nothing that is. It's not like, oh, Sam, I can't believe you lied to me again. In Supernatural, like, Dean, he lies to you every week, man. Like, just get over it. It's going to happen. They don't really do that in this. It's just kind of like a quick one-liner to make fun of Scott being a Boy Scout, blah 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 blah, that sort of thing. But before we forget, one other person other people come back, Jubilee and Beast also.
Yes. Yes.
So, and what it is great is we could sit here and talk about the cast members more, because what is really great is within even this first season, cast members rotate out, and you get other cast members coming in from the series. And I love that in the theme song, they start taking the characters out of the theme song and putting the ones rotating in, so that way, as a watcher, you kind of know, like, hey, Storm's gone, but Nightcrawler's here. This is awesome. So it gives you kind of a heads up with that, heads up just with the theme song itself. And
it feels it's like The Walking Dead in a sense. Like, if you kept up with the Walking Dead TV show, as characters came and went, because naturally a new character died almost every mid-season and like season finale, you had to weave in and out of that intro, and so there were some dynamic changes to it. And the same thing happens here with X-Men, is that there's not always going to be a main focus on this specific person for this episode. And to the spirit of the original, when they were first creating that intro, they wanted to cram as many characters as they could into it to really celebrate all these people. And so it was nice, because X-Men 97 doesn't focus on every single established X-Men character either. So it's kind of cool how they can still live through that like spirit of the original intro by doing this. And now they can go, well, the plot line's taking us this way. Here's who's going to be featured this week. So I thought that was really cool. I was a big fan of that.
Same. And if you have a favorite X-Men, like me, whose name is Colossus, and he's not in that regular rotating lineup, don't worry, our boy Morph has your back, and he works as a pretty great, like, consistent just cameo maker for you.
My God, yes,
he
was.
If you get Morph in a fight, and he's always mimicking another X-Men or just another Marvel superhero. So if, like, Colossus isn't on the team regularly in the animated series, He's there for at least 5 seconds, be like, yeah, and then 2 seconds later, he's Psylocke, and he's just cycling through people, so that you just feel like when they were making this, they wanted every single person who had a favorite character from that 90s lineup to have their favorite character show up somewhere in this first season and get their, 15 seconds of fame. 15
really,
minutes, seconds, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I like you adapted seconds to minutes because, I mean, these are 25-minute episodes. You only got so much time. But to that point, I mean, yeah, you can't cram every single X-Men character into this, which is like a running gag even within the Deadpool movies. You know, like they're like, yeah, could we just spare a little bit of budget to add a few more X-Men to this mansion, you know? And it's the same idea. It's like, yeah, you could potentially focus on a lot of different storylines here, but they chose some really interesting ones to initially work with. And the idea of this, like, Jean Grey clone saga, like, that was something that even I kind of forgot about a little bit. And once again, if you are averse to spoilers, do yourself a favor and go watch this. We're about to blow this shit wide open.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But this whole idea of Scott Summers and Jean Grey having a baby together and then finding out that, well, that was a clone version. That's not actually Jean Grey that you know. That whole plot twist to me was like the perfect balance of like, yep, this is an adult show.
Yep.
Also, this is a theme that I think kids back in the early 90s probably would have just been like, what is happening right now? but to find out that, like, Mr. Sinister, once again, this guy that, like, for some reason is inserted into the early portion of 97, like, he's causing some major problems, which involves Cyclops having sex with the wrong Jean Grey, and he has no idea. I mean...
And I think one of the biggest, like, questions that anyone could have over this scenario is why the Sinister insists on using the title of Mr. Like, you can just drop that. What's with the formality? It's not even like a big one. It's not like, doctor, thank you, I have the degree for a reason. It's like, no, guys, it's Sinister. He just goes, Mr. Sinister. Like, it's just like, it's such a fun.
It's up there with this old this old Fantastic Four skit that I remember back in like the early 90s, where they talk about this exact same thing. Norm Macdonald talks about the fact that the Fantastic Four have like all these unique nicknames, right? But Mr. Fantastic, he's always like, why are you named Mr. Fantastic? Yeah.
Good, fantastic.
And it's like everybody else, like the Human Torch, the Thing,
that's
the Invisible
fantastic.
Woman.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we get them. But Mr. Fantastic. And he's like, all right, fine. You don't like that name? I'll just call myself Assface in the Fantastic Three. Okay, fine. We'll go with that. It is that same idea. And I'm not, you're not wrong. I think the same thing. It's like, yeah, Mr. Sinister, maybe just a bad villain name. Yeah. But the shit that he's doing is kind of screwed up.
It's pretty bad.
And
yeah.
Yeah, and this insertion of a clone, I never really thought about how crazy this could be for him to basically have the foresight to notice that their genetic makeup is perfect to create what's essentially like a super mutant power battery for the future.
Yeah.
And that's the method that he used to get there. Obviously, the mutants having babies is kind of a unique thing in the X-Men universe anyway. You don't really hear a ton of this. So for me, I was like, I like this. This is like I said, Joe, this is the Telemundo drama that you never knew you needed.
Yeah.
You know, like you're sitting there watching this going like, ooh.
Yes. Speaking of Telemundo drama that you didn't know you needed, before we get to that, totally forgot that Bishop starts at this series too. He's a main caster at the start, because he's someone who does show up in one of like the other 1 hour specials, primetime specials, but he starts the show here. But now on to the more Telemundo drama that you didn't know you needed. Is that when going through the last will of one Charles Xavier, and they're getting to who is to run his school of gifted youngsters and head his X-Men, you would think this would be like, Scott Summers, like the leader of the X-Men for the whole time. No. It's Magneto.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what? He gave it to Magneto, and Magneto comes in with his own superhero flair, ditches the helmet, ditches the menacing red and purple look that he had in the days of old, and has a big superhero style M. And when you look at it, actually, it did take me a second. I'm like, this look is vaguely familiar to me. Like, was this a look that Magneto had in the past that they kind of resurrected for this? And they probably did, but then it hit me. This is Nuclear Man from Superman 4 with a little fluff around the neck. That's the Magneto look, except instead of the sun with the N, it's just a big old M. It's a very odd choice in hero wear, but that's a little spicy uppy drama that they try to give you here, is that we get Magneto the head of the X-Men here. And of course now Scott Summers is, why haven't I done enough for you, Xavier? Why have you done this to me? Curse you, dead man. As it were.
Oh, it's like perfect, like first kid syndrome, like you constantly questioning yourself. Obviously, I'm in the number 3 slot, I'm the pure hitter of the children, but
same.
When it came to
they get it right the third time around. That's all I'm saying. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. They've had a chance to work through the first 2 duds by the time they got to us, which I expect to get flack for that.
Hey,
but
my siblings don't listen to this. We can make fun of them all we want. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, neither do mine at this point. But when it comes to this Magneto, like, gotcha moment, I did really appreciate how his look is kind of indicative of the fact that he is no longer, like, just purely evil Magneto. Mm-hmm. And he has that different look, as you mentioned. Particularly, it looks like he could almost be like a German ice skater at this point. Yeah. and with that outfit he's got on. Yeah. I was going to say, you like the large M, yes? Yes. It was designed specifically to fit this, yes.
But this is probably the worst thing to use for Magneto, given his
I know. I just kind of screwed up. But at the same time, he does look very much updated for what's going on here. You've got this look of him being in the middle. I don't really trust him, right? There's no way you can if you're a fan of the original. But at the same time, he does have that Age of Apocalypse look to him as well. So like you feel like there's this, it's not just new. It's like, maybe I have to change a little bit about what I thought was right about this universe. And this is that moment where Joe and I would have a chance to talk shit on the Star Wars trilogy, the new one, mostly because subverting expectations, I think, does take some time. It's not something you can just, like, force down someone's throat.
Nope.
And this new Magneto does require a few episodes to kind of figure out and to see where he is now.
And see, at least, though, when you look at, again, like, the absolute character assassination that is the new Star Wars trilogy, that the idea that in order to make new characters shine, we have to make the old characters that you all loved dog shit. Instead of doing that with this series, what they do is, like, they make you rethink about a character for a while. But in the end, that character is still that character. So while I am going to say that, like, we do have to rethink Magneto in the early part of the series, you also have to really think over any time they make Magneto. I don't want to give shit away, but basically, this is not the first time.
Give it away.
Yeah, this is not the first time that they try to make Magneto out to be a hero in some way, shape, or form. X-Men has always done a really good job with Magneto saying something that will sound right to anyone at any given period of time. It's like, you know what? He's out of line, but he's right, because that is Magneto. Yeah. And you will see Magneto really stray or, like, sway further to, like, the side of good than you ever really have, but ultimately, he's still Magneto. They just really push that envelope of him going away from, like, we are Homo superior, They
Yeah.
push him away from that, the furthest they've probably ever have done in an animated medium before. And they do it very well in a myriad of ways, because you have also him leading the team, but then, as we said, we have aged up the storyline for the older audience, and now, because we've had a weird clone baby drama, we've had newer, more adult themes for, like, our actual main story. You know what this also needs to make it really Telemundo? Love triangle. Yeah. And we're going to get that with Rogue, Magneto, and Gambit. That's got to get peppered in there. So we blur that line a little bit more with that whole part of it.
I just see Gambit walking in, and he's like, Rogue, Magneto, ¿por qué? You know? What's happening here? You know? But I got to say, that was one of those things that unfortunately did get kind of spoiled for me, that there's this love triangle. Magneto and Rogue have a bit more history than we were ever really aware of. And Gambit doesn't quite really know Gambit doesn't really quite know what to make of it. He's the odd man out of this. He doesn't know the history either, and neither do we. So it kind of makes you want to bond with him a bit more. But unfortunately, this is one of those things that you can't really avoid if you've been on the internet for the last couple weeks. And I got to say, Joe, we've talked about some emotional hitting moments on this program this season and previous ones. And I have to say, man, watching events unfold that I knew were already going to happen between Gambit, obviously the threat of the Sentinels, and Genosha and all that. Is it Genosha? Genosha. I always forget how they pronounce
Genosha.
it. Genosha.
Yep.
Watching Gambit's sacrifice at Genosha, holy shit. I knew it was coming, and I still was not ready for it.
Oh man, like I wish I could do his accent to do him justice, which is one of the few times you'll ever hear me say that give Gambit justice, because like to me he's always been kind of this character that I thought looked really cool, but was never written to the character's potential. I feel like I've never had like a Gambit story that I've read or watched. It's like, fuck yeah, go Gambit. It's just like, God, you look so cool. Why can't they make you cooler? To me. My brother, outright hates Gambit. He thinks he's trash. But like,
oh really?
Oh yeah, he hates him. I don't know why. Like, maybe he just really hates, like, I don't know, gambling. He's maybe just not a Kenny Rogers fan. I don't know. But yeah, just the whole like, and the cards are always in my favor. Like, it's just like the way. Oh, like I screwed up so bad. I wish I could do it right. It was like, Moshe, the name is Gambit.
Yeah.
And he just, like it's. I wish I could ruin it for you. It's so good.
I know.
I want to deprive you of that moment because of how great it is.
That's the impact of the writing on this show, though. I mean, as you try to like sell somebody else on watching a cartoon that's in an adult setting, you're like, how many cartoons can I point to where I felt emotions, within it? And I have to say, when we're comparing TV to TV here, this is probably the first time since I even want to say Game of Thrones. We're talking about the battle against the White Walkers and the season, the season finale or the season end. That was one of those few times, Joe, where I felt that sense of like, holy shit, I cannot look away from this TV right now. And watching what Gambit was doing on screen during that moment, it was so well executed. You just don't see that happen on a cartoon. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And right after the just absolute like emotional joyride they take you on between Rogue and Gambit before that whole thing happens, because you have this whole moment where they're really sorting out like where they stand with each other, and they really have at each other, and it's this kind of, I don't want to say it's not classic. It is that Rogue clearly wants more like action from Gambit, and not in like a weird sexual way, but also kind of in a sexual way. There's the whole she can't touch thing, so she wants him to do something to make it more apparent that he wants to be with her. And Gambit is always just kind of playing the cards to his favor sort of thing, but at the same time just wanting to, like, apparently be arm candy for Rogue, but not actually arm candy because they can't touch, but also wants to tell her all the time over his endless affection for her and how that should be enough, but it's not, and blah, 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 blah. They finally blow up at each other, and then Genosha starts blowing up, and oh my god, all of the emotions and all the excitement, flashing colors, what do we do? Get a motorcycle, let's punch things. All of this happens and just comes to a massive head in a way that you, unless, like Mark read spoilers, I did not, that I wasn't quite ready to see, like, coming. Because, mostly because Gambit then does something that, like, my friend and one-time co-host of the podcast, Josh Benson, told me that Gambit could always do, where he could just charge anything with kinetic energy and make it explode. And I'm like, no, he can't do with everything. He does it with playing cards because he's like a class like 2 or 3 mutant. Like, his powers can only extend so far. Son of a bitch, I was wrong. Totally wrong. Well done, Gambit.
And it makes you feel so many things. You're kind of fist pumping because you're like, holy shit, Gambit was stronger than I ever gave him credit for.
Yep.
Then you also are thinking, but at the same time, his story with Rogue is more heartbreaking than I ever gave it credit for.
Yeah.
And then you're like, but also there's that emotional thing about Gambit not getting Rogue because Magneto may have distracted her too much during this sequence. And you think about that, like, does that feel wrong? It feels wrong to me that she would run to Magneto, right?
It's just one of those things where it's like, just tell me what you want. God damn it. Just tell me what you want me to do. I don't know what you want. There are 2 people on this team who can read minds, and I'm not one of them.
Yeah. It is like the animated series of The Notebook, isn't it? It's that rough. It's like, just tell me what you want. But hey, to that point, Joe, I mean, that without giving too much more away, because I will say this is one last thing I'll mention. The whole focus of this series is that we're getting reintroduced to people that we're familiar with. But it also makes a very critical and an awesome decision here to not really tell you what the X-Men are facing. It keeps that sense of, like, faceless evil contained for a very long period of time. And that's one of those things that so much like sci-fi and so much like even just general superhero films and content usually gets really wrong, is that you know what you're facing right away, so that good and evil vibe is so easy to get behind. In this case, you're kind of flying blind for like 60% of that first season. It helps to focus much more on what's going on. But I mean, what effect did it have for you?
I think I was actually I have to dial it back because I was thinking of the effect that it had in this season and kind of where I'm hoping the effect that it doesn't have on the next season or seasons to come. But what it had for me was a little bit of, like, cloak and daggers. You've got all this stuff happening here. They introduce villain, and then another villain, and then another villain. And it's like, aha, this is some Sinister Six. This is some Legion of Doom. They've all come together to, like, put their resources together and finally take down these X-Men. And then that didn't happen. It's like, oh, well, not all these players are actually connected the way we think they are. And the one who was actually pulling the strings, not who we thought would be the one pulling said strings. So I appreciated the deception and the idea over me ending up that I was wrong. I really love being wrong in a season or in a movie and having it not be, like, just very easy to see from the get-go over what happened. So I appreciated that. I also appreciated that in, like, the small 10-episode first season that we had, that they found time to have a side story arc that had no bearing on necessarily the story as a whole, with Jubilee going into a video game. It's like, oh, hey, look at that. Let's just do this for an episode and have fun. Yeah. Hell yeah, we can. So I appreciate that, but I think what I may appreciate more is that when you saw just how big this was, like how big of an effect this was going to have, they didn't limit it to necessarily the X-Men being around.
No.
This show did a great job of throwing in cameos by showing this is a very, very big deal, and it's going to have an impact on the rest of the Marvel Universe, especially when, you know, most of the Marvel superheroes hang out in New York City. Therefore, they're all going to hear about this. So it was nice to see some of our other fellow 90s animated heroes show up in one or two places while this was happening.
I agree with you on that, and it didn't take away too much either, which is what I thought was the really responsible balancing of the Avengers, obviously having Iron Man, Captain America show up, but then the concept of what the animated series was doing back in the 90s, which was bringing in some of these characters that maybe mainstream wasn't so familiar with. And that goes even to the stretches of like Blade. I mean, we got into some team ups that we didn't really think we'd ever see, and so the idea that they're taking those chances again that they did originally was really cool. But at the same time, they were balancing that whole emotional, action-packed approach, but then still giving you plenty of things to look at. Like, I mean, I honestly I didn't know they were gonna reference Omega Red when like the power goes down, and I'm so like going, oh my god, I know who that is. And like you got Doctor Doom showing up, so they really did prove just how much you can do with this property. And there's so much more setup that we won't actually spoil for you as this show wraps up. But God, there's so much that they're going to be doing. Season 2 has already been written, and they're working on that. Season 3 was also outlined. They do still have some of that, and that's even amidst the firing here of Bo DeMayo. So even with that, we've got a lot that's on the way. And Joe, I don't know about you, I'm excited as shit for that.
Dude, you know what? I was really hoping that you were going to try and break it down and say that you had 6 reasons why you were excited, so I could say, no, my friend. 9. Oh, God. Like, when our boy Adrian had that line, I'm like, that was good. That is, God damn. Like, it is so hard to make a good one-liner these days. It just doesn't come off cheesy and awful. But, like, Nightcrawler says that. Ooh, and I would love to be able to just gush for at least 10 to 15 minutes on how awesome Nightcrawler is alone in this. But like you said, we just don't have time, because it is time that we thank all of our listeners and Dissection crew for what they do week in and week out for us here at Digital Dissection. So please make sure that if you are listening to us anywhere that you normally do, that, hey, check us out on YouTube, where we've got weekly videos about some of your favorite things.
But hey, we also love hearing from you, so feel free to message us over at digitaldissection@gmail.com or in our communities across social media. We do love your ideas, your suggestions, and pretty much anything that you want to talk about, so long as it's tastefully done. And until next time, pop culture nerds, keep on dissecting.